Welcome. I can't believe this many people are here. This is awesome. Thank you guys for coming out this evening. My name is Jeromy. I'm a graphic designer and illustrator here in Columbus, and this is something that a few friends of mine and I put together, and it's just super excited that you guys are here. So you may be wondering who we are and what the heck this is, and you wouldn't be alone, because this is hopefully the first of many events we're going to be doing, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. Jeremy's a lot taller than me, so I'm going to stand up here. This is, like I said, this is the first event. I was going to start this back in November, and then my wife, who is far wiser than I, basically, we were on a walk one day, and she said, you thought about maybe not starting something right in the middle of the holidays. And I thought, January is kind of like the worst time to live in Columbus, Ohio. People are going to want to get indoors, so this seemed to work out really well. So I really appreciate you guys coming. Parables is a creative community, one that seeks meaning and purpose through our daily work. This is a place where artists, designers, writers, filmmakers, creators, and makers of all types can gather to celebrate the Creator and celebrate our bestowed gifts of creativity. We share our talents and stories to encourage and inspire. We embrace inspired storytelling as a form of teaching and instruction, and how it can mold us to point the way forward. We are Parables, and all are welcome here. And no matter where you are on your faith journey, we just hope that you'll come and be inspired today, and we hope to be able to inspire and foster a really great community that you'll want to be a part of for future events, and I hope you all come back. So I just wanted to take a minute to thank the people and organizations that have partnered with us so far. This wouldn't have happened without ICC. Jim is standing back here in the back with the vest on. If you don't get a chance before you leave, make sure you say hi to him and thank him for allowing us to use the space here. This place is awesome. I'm not going to go through all of these, but in different ways, a lot of these folks have poured into this, and I'm really thankful for it. If you're part of a business or a church or an organization that's interested, let me know, and we'll see how we can partner with you guys in the future. In case you haven't figured this out yet, we asked you at the front as well, but we're not super high tech. We're going to be sending out periodic emails, so if you're interested in kind of figuring out what's going on next or updates, sign up for our email list. It's on our website. So I'm going to try to do this as quickly as possible so we can get Jeromy up here. So next month, Tim Corliss. Where's Tim sitting? Is he? Tim's right back here. Tim is a good friend of mine, and he'll be here to present his film, I've Had a Good Day. It's a documentary about a friend and mentor and master penman, Bill Lilly, who passed away this past summer. I saw this movie back in November, and I immediately asked Tim if he would share it with us. So went and saw this phenomenal film. I'm hoping we can all have popcorn and just kind of settle in for another cold winter night in Columbus and watch a movie together. It's fantastic. You'll walk away inspired. It's a great story. It's about someone in your hometown. It's awesome. You'll really love it. And then Tim's going to stick around for a Q&A afterwards, and he'll be around for the rest of the evening if you want to talk with him as well after that. Still working on something for April. It's right around the time of spring break for ICC, and a lot of stuff's going on. We'll see what happens, but this is why I'm asking you to go ahead and sign up for the email. So as soon as we have something, we'll let you know. But we do have something scheduled for May. May is National Bike Month, so we're asking Jay Kinzinger to come, and he builds the most insanely gorgeous handmade wooden bicycles. They're all handmade. They're unbelievable. He actually is a teacher here at ICC, and he has his shop in Cedarville, Ohio, and he's going to come and he's going to actually bring some of his bikes out, so you'll be able to check them out as well. One thing I neglected to mention with Bill's, we're going to have some of his former students come. We're going to have a bunch of his original work here as well that you can check out, and hopefully do some demonstrations as well, so that should be super fun. And then I'm super excited also about our March event. These are totally out of order. I just skipped this is first time, right? March, I have Bob Ewing. He's a designer and letterer from Indianapolis. He's going to be coming in. He's going to be spending the whole day with us. So in the afternoon, around 1 o'clock, he's going to do a lettering workshop here. That is going to be a paid event. It's going to be about $100 for a 3-hour workshop with him. Hands-on, how to do custom lettering. It's called Vector Machine. He's awesome. You'll love working with Bob. We're limiting that to 25 people. So if you're interested, Go to the website. There's a little link on it right now. You can just say, like, notify me when all the details are here. We'll get that to you. We're literally just kind of tying up the loose ends on this right now. And then that evening, he's going to come back. It's our second Sunday, just like this is. And he's going to do a talk called Can't Never Did Anything. Heard this talk a few years ago at a conference. It will blow your mind. He's awesome. He's funny, super talented. You'll love hearing him. So I would totally make it out if you can. You'll see some signs around here for leaving tips for speakers. This is kind of our way of just saying thank you to the folks that come out. So if you've got you've got your phone with you and you want to hit the QR code, that'd be great. There's signs around. You can do it afterwards as well. But you know, if you enjoy what you hear and you're interested in tipping the speaker tonight, just throw a couple bucks their way. That'd be great. If you see these buttons, if you have questions during, afterwards, whatever, if people wearing these red pins, you can feel free to ask us. We can help you navigate the building. If you have any questions or need anything, just let us know. And we'll be around till about 9 o'clock. So if you want to stick around, feel free. There's more cookies. We're trying to kill everybody's New Year's resolutions tonight. So there's pop and cookies over here. Feel free to grab some. And Jeremy's going to stick around afterwards as well. He's got some of his work here. Check out some of his work. Buy a bunch of his stuff. Show him some support. That would be super awesome. So I want to open tonight in a quick word of prayer. God, we just thank you for this opportunity to be here this evening. We thank you for the gifts that you've given Jeromy and for his willingness to share them with us. And I pray that you'd be with him tonight, that you would direct his words. We ask that you would bless our time together, and this would be a great evening. We'd all leave feeling inspired and more loved by you. We thank you. Amen. So those who know me well know I'm a sucker for finding random things at garage sales. So last summer, I was digging through a bin full of just junk, and this guy, I pulled this out, and I was like, how much is this? And he's like, I don't even know what that is. And I was like, I'll just tell me how much it is. And he said, I'll give it to you for $5. I was like, okay. So while I was standing there in front of him, I found this little hidden button here, and I pushed it open, and I did this, and I showed him what it was, if I can get it out. Of course, it doesn't open when I'm standing in front of people. It's just absolutely beautiful little camera. So I have a collection of these. They all sit on a wall in my office, just loads of these old cameras. My wife has told me I need to slow down with the purchase of old cameras. But I remember taking a class in college, and it was a photo class. And I remember the first day, everyone's kind of got their DSLRs. Actually, they would have just been SLRs at the time. There was no digital camera back then. Everyone just seemed a little bit like overly freaked out about these new cameras. And he said, listen, I just want everyone to understand something. A camera is nothing more than a light-tight box and a shutter and a piece of film. There's really not much more to it. If you've ever done a pinhole camera, you know that that's the case. It's just the simplest of things. So, but what that really made me start to think about was when Jesus had his first recorded speech to a crowd of thousands of people. He looked out and he said, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a basket. Instead, they set it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and glorify the Father." We have the opportunity to help create an indelible mark on people, just like a camera creates an indelible mark on a piece of film. And I just thought it was such a cool illustration for tonight. And we live in a dark world, in a world that needs light more than ever. And I asked Jeromy here because I think he's just a great example of this. For those of you that know him, he's been a friend of mine for the last few years, and I'm just really excited to be able to bring him to speak with you this evening. Jeromy brings his experience, his caring heart, his creativity to the forefront as role and founder and namesake of Laux Creative. When not directing or documenting the world photographically, he enjoys a good pipe of tobacco, sunny afternoons spent at a brewery, and sharing time with his supportive wife, Anna, an employee at the James Cancer Hospital. He loves meeting people and building new relationships. He lives his personal motto every day: love everyone always. Please welcome my good friend, Jeromy Laux.
So thank you guys so much for coming, first off. I'm excited to talk to you what I'm most passionate about in life, and that's honestly portrait photography, but photography as a whole. I titled this talk, Don't Talk to Strangers, just as a play on the old saying that you were told when you were a kid. But I'm encouraging you guys tonight to actually talk to strangers, because I feel like I've learned the most from people that I've met in my life. And reflecting back on my journey, I realized that I was shaped mostly by the people that I've met and the friends in this room. I wanted to start by introducing myself. This is my lovely wife, Anna, who's right over here. So love my marriage. I'm so happy that, I met Anna at a church that I moved to Columbus to go to. And I also wanted to introduce one of my other favorite people, my dog. This is my French bulldog, Phoebe, and I definitely never thought I'd be the type of person who bought clothes for their dogs, but here we are. I own a video production company in Lewis Center, Ohio, and we create all sorts of videos for universities, small businesses. This is the exterior of our building, the interior. And then here is a little bit of behind the scenes and inside the workspace that we have. And these are some of my favorite people who work with me to create videos. Some of them are here. Alex Camacho here in the back, shout out. But I'll show you guys a little bit about what we do at Laux Creative.
Yeah, that's a usable take. Let's get another one.
Yeah, let's pull back the curtain to what Westerville has to offer.
We have some deep-rooted history.
We were known as the dry capital of the world.
What's up, man? Would you give us a shoot update, how the day is going?
20 minutes. Things are going great. A+.
So that's what I do just as a living, create videos. But tonight I'm here to talk to you about my hobby. This all started when my parents, who are here tonight, love my parents so much. They gifted me a camera at Christmas, and despite my facial expression in this photo, I was really happy about it. And I remember I took a small digital camera to Washington, D.C., winter of 2008, when I was in 8th grade. And I took this photo, and the Washington Monument was reflecting in the water, and I remember thinking how beautiful this image was. And it looked a lot cooler when it was tiny on my little digital camera. And then I got it on the computer, I'm like, this is really crappy and really blurry. But on my camera, it looked really cool. I showed my teacher, and she was like, man, Jeromy, you're so talented. And that felt so good to me. It definitely instilled my passion in life. My teachers growing up in middle school. And here's a few other photos that I took. I aimed my camera up a spiral staircase. And then I remember liking this image because at the top of the Washington Monument, I was standing and I took this photo. And at this time, I didn't know anything about shutter speed or aperture or ISO, but my shutter was not set right and it got blurry. And I remember thinking how cool it is that there's little number 2s all over the image. I did not think that was going to be funny, but everyone's laughing. I really did think it was cool. And as I got into high school, I started making silly videos for my friends, and this is the Grabowski brothers. Shout out Ryan Irwin, who's here. I filmed a skit video for Young Life, and basically just to make people laugh, silly videos. And then I started filming my friend's wedding, Cody and Katie Wright. I shot a couple before this, but this is when I started, I think this might be my career. But then I got into taking portraits. I got a couple internships and started traveling with them. And while I was in places, I'd bring my camera with me and start meeting people and taking photos of them. So I've met a lot of different people along the way. I've been hired to do various things. And what I love about portrait taking is it gives me an excuse to get into people's bubble and to learn from them. And I feel like something else that I really love is now taking that image and putting it in front of someone else and then them feeling inspired by that. I think what I would consider success is when someone looks at an image that's totally different than them, but they can relate with the emotion that they're seeing. And in my way, it's a little bit unifying when you go through an exhibition and you're in the suburbs of Columbus. You've never been to Haiti or any of these places, but there's someone who's totally impoverished who you've never met before, but you can relate with the feeling that they're feeling in this image. That's what I would consider success. I also take photos of not just people, but landscapes as well. I went on this trip with my parents, actually. It was not easy getting into this little gondola boat, by the way. There's a few more. I love this photo because I feel like it's a hybrid of a landscape and a portrait. Because at first glance, you see a meat market. And then the longer you start to stare at it, you realize that there's like dead cut up fish all over the tables. And then you realize there's this woman kind of like just staring into your soul right in the middle. But I love this image just because I feel like there's so much happening. I just want to keep looking at it. And I still feel like I find things new. But tonight, this is the overview. I'm going to talk about revealing your drives. 2, discovering your purpose. 3, rekindling your creativity. And 4, when drive and purpose collide and the miraculous thing that happens. So let's start with revealing your drives. So one day when I was in Italy, I was just traveling after an internship for Young Life, a nonprofit organization. I met this guy, and a lot of my friends joke with me and just say, he doesn't look like he wanted his photo taken, which is absolutely true. But I bought these prayer beads off of him. You could see him holding them in his hands. And that kind of gave me permission to meet him. And then eventually he was like, yeah, you can take my portrait, even though he wasn't talking to me because we don't speak the same language. But he gestured like, yes. And I took his image, and he gave me like this plastic petri dish looking thing with prayer beads inside. And I walked down the street, and I met this guy who's sitting on basically this steel curb here. I remember I sat next to him and kind of looked over at him. He looked at me like, what are you doing? And I outreached my hand because he looked like he was in distress. All I had was the prayer beads, and I handed it to him. And I honestly didn't even think that it was like a religious gesture or anything of it, but it meant something to him. And I remember I handed it to him, and you could see him begin to cry. And what I realized was that he took this as a sign of God or some sort, that he's probably practicing Catholicism. And I felt really excited because to me, I'm like, man, it's really cool that I made someone's day, and I didn't even know that this would make, what I mean? I just pulled it out of my pocket. I had just bought it. So he leaned over and smiled at me because I asked to take his photo. I was like, no, like, is there any way I was like gesturing toward him because it's challenging when you don't speak the same language. I put him back in the position that he was in when I found him. And so he looked over at me, and this is the portrait that I captured. Another man that same day, this all was the same day, was pushing his grocery cart across the street in Rome, Italy, and he accidentally spilled it all over the place. And I honestly, just such a character. He's a silly guy. He's upbeat, really happy. And I ran over and I helped him put all of his belongings back in his cart. And I remember he looked at me and just smiled. Again, we don't speak the same language. And I pointed at my camera, asked to take his photo, and so he smiled again, and I asked to put like his cigarette back in his mouth because that's how he was when I found him, and then to blow the smoke a little, so I was able to capture the smoke coming out as he blew it. And then still the same day, I walked over to the Coliseum, and I saw this woman rocking back and forth with her head between her legs, and everyone was passing her up. It was really crowded. And I remember being heartbroken by it, honestly, just because it's like, clearly this woman needs help, and everyone is pretending like she is not there. So I had 20 euro in my pocket, and I reached into her little Pringles can, and I set it into her Pringles can. And I know she didn't see me at first, but she saw me because my hand kind of creeped in underneath her hood. And she looked up and was so thankful and smiled, and this was the expression that I captured. I love this photo because what it says to me is just pure thankfulness. And she's clearly grateful that someone just saw her. And, you know, hundreds of miles away, my Aunt Lori sees this and falls in love with it, and then spends hours painting it for me and gifts it to me. And she didn't even know the story behind it, but she said to me, I love that photo because it says, I just love her expression of just thankfulness. So now I'm in Columbus, Ohio. This is obviously a different day. And this woman is walking down the street with her hand full of kerosene containers. So I walked up to her and I'm like, why do you have so many kerosene containers? And she's like, well, I'm using it to heat up my tent. So very quickly I realized this woman lives in a tent in Columbus. So I said, can I see it? And then she took me back behind the convention center downtown, under the overpass, and I realized that there were probably 15 different tents there, and there's a whole community of people living because they didn't have a home. And I was heartbroken. I remember thinking, how in the world could this be possible? In Columbus, Ohio, I've been to Haiti, you know, there are people really poor who are trying their best. But in Columbus, Ohio, these people don't have a home. They're homeless. They don't have, their biggest concern is how are they going to find their kerosene containers to keep them warm at night. So it struck me. It was really heavy. So what I decided to do was, you know what, I'm going to walk around. I'm going to meet everyone. I'm going to start making a list of what everyone needs. I remember she said, I want Lucky Charms because I like to eat the marshmallows. And I put that on my list. And then I sent out the list to my friends, and people started Venmoing me money. And so I went to Costco, and I spent all of it on all the gifts. A few days later, I came back in like Santa Claus with everyone's stuff, and I gave it to them. But I remember thinking, they were all grateful, but I remember thinking to myself, like, man, I'm kind of bummed that they aren't more grateful. And it was then that I realized I might have some selfish motives in what I'm doing. And that doesn't change the fact that it still impacted them. But I definitely was giving because I was trying to get something back. And this translates even into the rest of my photo career, but we'll get there. I was leaving the campsite after giving all the gifts, and I remember there was this guy, Mo. Now has become a great friend of mine, although I only see him like once every 2 years. But every time I see him, it's like we pick up where we left off. He walked up to me. He's like, hey, what's that? You got a camera there? Are you a photographer? And I was like, yep, I like to take photos. And I said to him, I was like, is there anything I can do to help? Like maybe go get you food or something. And he's like, I eat better than you. And I was like, no, you don't. And then, you know, Mo didn't want help. And I'm like, man, you live in a tent. It doesn't seem like you have anything. And every time I try to help him, he would tell me, it's like, oh, no, people are so generous. They give me so much. People are constantly giving me food and money and all this stuff. And I, again, had one of those heart checks where I'm like, man, maybe I shouldn't just assume that people need help. Maybe this is just a lifestyle that they've lived or whatever. And I began talking to Mo, and he started telling me his story and how he has gotten to this such wholesome place. He told me, I got in a car accident and I hit my head and it sent me into a coma. And he disclosed a lot of other stuff with me that is very personal to him, so I don't want to share it tonight. But in this conversation that we were having, he gave me this expression. I was talking with him, and I was able to he was able to be comfortable enough for me to take pictures as we're conversing. And he said, Mo is someone who's just honestly has inspired my life greatly. And I realized that maybe I have more to learn from people that I meet than I have to give people that I meet. And so Mo went to church with me at Ethos, and this is me, Mo, and Santa Claus. Such a random photo. I will say it was Mo's idea, though, to do this. All right, so this leads me into my next point. So discovering your purpose. So I definitely am starting to understand my drive a little, and I'm noticing, hey, this is like not as pure as I'd like it to be, my motives and why I'm doing what I'm doing. Now I want to talk to you about discovering your purpose. Why are you here? What is it that you were, called to be here on earth in your short time? What impact are you going to leave? So I was hired to go to shoot a video of an orphanage. This is how it was phrased to me. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, great. We're going to go to an orphanage. It's great staff. Healthcare is great. Facilities probably immaculate, all this stuff. Well, I was very wrong. I landed in Haiti, and then they immediately was like, hey, we got to get into another plane that's going to take us to Jeromy, Haiti, ironically my name. And they packed me in this plane like a sardine, very small plane. And I was flying over the ocean. I took a few photos. I remember looking down and thinking, man, this place is beautiful. And I landed, and this was the small plane that I was in. It was not easy getting in and out of that thing. And I saw this kid standing on right on the runway as we landed. There's a lot of people kind of watching and always curious on who's coming into the poorest place on earth, literally the poorest place per capita on earth, Jeromy, Haiti. And Yifrose was the woman I was told runs the orphanage. They said, this woman, started this orphanage, she runs it, she's in charge, and she's driving. And I remember I got in the back seat of this car, they're taking me to the orphanage, and people are just approaching the car. So this is a photo I took of this man through the car window talking to Yifrose about life. Like, how's your day been? Stuff like that. She's really well known around the area. As we kept going, I realized that I'm not exactly welcome in Haiti. I, for some reason, thought that, again, with my heart check thing, that I was going to be this knight in shining armor coming to help. But I realized that my presence wasn't really welcome there, and I was getting a lot of looks like this. This is Yifrose, another person who has impacted my life in ways I have a really hard time articulating. She is such a saint. And she is a perfect example of someone who has found their purpose and their drive. And behind her, actually, you might think, oh, what beautiful she sells shells. My goodness. That's actually trash along the coast there. Bottles, various different things. That's in Jeromy, Haiti, just trash along the coastline. So I shot this video, and I'm going to show you 2 minutes of the introduction just so you can get to know Yifrose like I did.
My name is Yifrose Pierre. I'm 65 years old. The reasons I'm at orphanage, because when I'm a little girl, I used to be slave, hungry. My stomach need food, I can get anything to eat. I say, Lord, if you help me when I big, I'm going to take care of good children. That's the reason I'm starting orphanage. Oh, good. I'm start orphanage when I'm 23 years old. 1973, we get children raised and we get education, get professions from the doctor, engineer, agriculture, everything, pastor. We have over 250 pass already finished to go and pass in this place. Jesus gave me this job. I asked him, when I'm little, that's what I want to do. My mom died, my dad died, I have one brother. He's not in here. I'm only here with Jesus, with children. This is my family. I'm not let the kids. I'm here until I'm die. Have kids taking care of me too. When I get old, they know they get a job to taking care of me because I raise him when they little. I raise him, give him good education. My heart with Jesus and children. I be mother. I be job mother, job father, everything for this kid. They fell in love with me. I fell in love with kids.
That's Yves, and I was hit with this reality that this is not the orphanage that I thought it was going to be. This was a woman taking care of all of these children by herself. And it's really crazy that she had been through something so hard. She said in that dialogue, I don't know if you heard it, but when I was a child, I used to be a slave. I used to be hungry. I didn't get food. Jesus gave me this job. And how cool is it that this woman chose to make such an impact from her experience on earth rather than living in malice and anger and against the world. But instead, she chose to literally pick up orphans off the street and bring them into her home and raise them as her own. I was told it was an orphanage, but that's not what it was. Yves was a mother to all these children, and they literally called her Mommy Yves. She didn't run the she didn't run the orphanage. She was their mom. So these people also had an impact by Yves, and I know that because I talked to them and interviewed them. They were also discipled by Yves, and they came into the facility to wash clothes of the children. And this is them doing that, washing clothes. Her name was, they nicknamed her Yeah, and she works at the orphanage as well. And I interviewed her as well, and this is in her home. I did a portrait of her with this beautiful drape that was strung in her bedroom, and she stood in front of it, and the lighting was just basic. This was just perfect, and this is an expression I got of her. Here's a portrait of Yves' kids. And this is another worker who was in the previous photo as well. This guy I met wearing a Radio Shack polo. He took care of the grounds there, so he kept up with the livestock, and he would take care of the chickens so that the food could eat. They sourced their own food there in the orphanage. I remember when I was there, I was hit with the real reality of where I was when this woman was just dropped off at the door. This child was just dropped off at the door. And her mom had just passed, and no one knew what to do with her. And everyone knew Yves, and so they dropped her off at Yves' house because she's known in Jeromy, Haiti as the person who takes in orphans and takes them in as her own. And she clinged on to the hand, you can see it here, of one of the people that I was with on this trip. And I captured this image because what it said to me was there was this little girl who was lost, and she found the closest hand that she could. And you can see just that comfort in her eyes. These are two boys in Yves' facility. And what I love about this is despite the look of this facility, these kids are so happy. All of them are. My heart, I can't look at you, Anna, because you're going to make me cry. My heart was breaking because I was realizing when I had my experience trying to dissect my motives, that this is what it's about. It's not about, trying to make an impact on someone's life, me showing up in knight in shining armor, but instead making a true difference in someone's life, giving just to give, helping just to help, and not wanting anything in return from it, but just simply to give, to give. And that's what Yves was teaching me. And this is her with all of her adopted orphans that she took in as her own. An absolute saint to this earth. And she doesn't want anything in return from it, and she's still doing it right now. I'm friends with her on Facebook. I really am. So she said, when I'm a little girl, I used to be slave. Hungry, I didn't get anything to eat. Yves knew her purpose. and that was to make a change from what she experienced as a child. She said, I'll be everything for these kids. I'll be your mother, your father, everything. They fell in love with me, and I fell in love with these kids. So this leads me into my third point. What happens when you have dissected your drive so much that you don't have any drive left? This is me, like to a T. I am constantly looking introspectively to the point where I have just totally emptied myself out of where my motives are coming from, and I feel hopeless. I've dissected myself so much that I don't even want to do anything now because I can't do anything for the right reasons. This is what we call burnout, and this is what I was experiencing. So this leads me to my third point, rekindling your creativity. I decided to give up my digital camera for a while because I was moving so fast in creating content just to get people to, give me a little affirmation, to tell me like my teacher did when I was a kid that you're talented. Makes me feel a little bit more good about myself. It fills a void, if that makes sense. So I was moving too fast, and I decided to intentionally slow myself down. Maybe that will rekindle my passion for photography. So I'm going to show you this video really quick. It is of me talking in this same shirt. That's embarrassing.
I started doing photography because I loved it. I was in love with it. And I noticed myself falling out of love with it, weirdly enough, because it was turning into this, I was turning into a photo machine, and I stopped doing it for fun. So I told myself, I'm gonna force myself to slow down, I'm gonna force myself to take the time and to do something fun. There's a lot of really good things in just taking the photo. And I learned to slow down, and that I don't need that instant gratification with digital photography, that every photo is a piece of work, and to just kind of enjoy those one at a time.
I definitely laughed way too hard about slurping that coffee. These are my great friends, Evan, who's here tonight, Anna, my wife, and Jordan, who couldn't make it because he has COVID tonight. I guess that is a valid excuse. Didn't want to get all you guys sick. But yeah, so I decided to go to Iceland with my friends, and I picked up this camera that at that time had never used before. And I thought maybe this would be the solution to rekindle this passion that I have for photography. And it winds, makes a cool sound. I'll do it one more time. And it kind of just makes it feel a little bit more real, bringing you back to the roots of where all this came from with photography. And so I decided intentionally not to bring a camera. The only camera I brought was my phone, and I brought this with a whole bunch of Kodak Portra film. And so I was changing all the film, and I thought to myself, well, if I don't have the ability to post my photos immediately to Instagram, maybe that'll humble me a little bit. And when I get back, it forces me to wait and just actually enjoy what I do. So this was my attempt to rekindle. Here's a photo of me. Iceland is unbelievable if you haven't been. It's like a different planet. And I definitely cannot get in that position anymore. But that's the camera. And I took this photo of a horse. I remember I was running out in the field, and I won't tell the whole story. But I took this photo, and I remember loving it so much when I finally got it back, when it was scanned in. And this was just like the kind of promo graphic that we used for the eventually what would become a book and the exhibition. And here are a few images that I took while I was in Iceland. And this is all on this camera here, which you guys I'll put it on the back table too so you can see it. The landscape is very unique, and I honestly, going to Iceland in and of itself would have been enough to really like just give me a place to relax and clear my head a little bit. This was a guy who worked a food truck there in Iceland. This was our Airbnb host. And this photo always makes me think of the Goonies with the token. So I decided to do a Kickstarter before I even had bought the camera or the film. And it was probably a stupid decision. If it had gone wrong, it was definitely a stupid decision. But I was funded by a lot of people to do this project. And I didn't even have the photos to show for it yet. And when the photos came back, I was definitely really excited. And I put them all like in the book, which is back on the table. And I started selling them at an exhibition and sharing it with my friends. And honestly, this trip did teach me a lot. It did help me slow down. It did help me with what I was feeling with burnout. But it definitely wasn't the solution to rekindling my creative drive. Because all I was really doing was just cleaning the slate and starting over. Ultimately, I'm still getting what I wanted, which was affirmation and people to like my work. So it's not necessarily, like, I just delayed the process. I was there for 11 days. I was enjoying my craft, but as soon as I got home, I scanned the film all in. I'm doing the same thing. I'm getting affirmation from my friends. They're seeing it on the walls. It's making me feel good and talented, like my teacher told me when I was in 8th grade. That wasn't the solution. I realized when I was in Iceland and reflecting, I was using my creativity to get likes on Instagram, to distract me from the pain I was feeling from my past hurt, and to make me feel special. That's never what it was meant for. This was never meant to do that. This is just a camera. It can't do that. And I'm trying to use this camera to make me feel special and affirmed. I'm trying to use this camera to distract me from pain that I don't want to deal with. And that is not a healthy thing to do. It wasn't enough. This cannot do what I needed. Well, it's still really cool that I was able to make it into a book, and I put this on a shelf in a gift shop in Springfield, Ohio, where I'm from. And this lady picks it up off the shelf, takes it back with her, ironically, to Washington, D.C. That just hit me right now. She's in Washington, D.C., and she gifts it to her friend, Leah Roberts, who's a retired National Geographic photo editor, and puts it in her hands. She opens it, and she loves it, and she sends me an email. And in the email, it said, Icelandic exposure is a love song to the art of photography and to the subjects Jeromy Laux photographed. Laux' choice of creating images with Kodak Portra 160 and 400 film reveals Laux' patience and dedication to his vision and his craft, a refreshing approach to image making in a world oversaturated by the instant gratification of digital photography. Icelandic exposure reveals Laux' interpretation of Iceland in fine grain, and with a palette as muted and stark as the landscape, and with it brings tender portraits that linger in the viewer's visual memory. I remember getting that email and thinking, holy crap. I was just honestly so shocked that this ended up in her hands. I had so many questions. I'm like, how in the world did you get this book? I put it in like 3 stores. And I ended up getting on the phone with her, and she told me the whole story. I wish I had put it in there, but there's a photo of her holding it at her birthday party. Didn't want to hold the camera that whole time. And so what I'm starting to get somewhere, though, with my drive. I feel like I'm actually starting to get a little traction. I'm starting to realize that my camera was never the solution to making me feel loved. It was never the solution, no matter how many times I twist and turned it, how many times I changed it to film or whatever. There's no creative way of spinning my passion to make me feel loved. And that's what I wanted, and I was looking at it all wrong. So what happens when you start to align your drive and your purpose? It's miraculous. Yves Rose demonstrated it. And I'm going to share with you some portraits of people I've taken along my photo taking career. And this is one of them, Brad Walker. I walked into his shop and there's just clay splattered everywhere. It's all over his phones. It's all over the floor. It's all over his arms and his outfit. And clearly, like, this dude loves what he does. I remember just being super inspired by him and then seeing this photo of him young on the wall with clay splattered all over it. I thought to myself, how in the world has this guy done this his whole life? He's been doing this his whole life. And he gave Anna and I soup bowls to have for free. I remember I was walking through the streets of Edinburgh, Scotland, and I met a lot of people who were creative and who have discovered their passions. I remember standing here and hearing the sound of a harp, and it was beautiful. And I had to find where the source of sound was coming from. And it was this man playing harp on the side of the street, totally enthralled with what he was doing, paying no mind to anyone watching him around him, inspiring everybody, but he's not even looking up long enough to see who's there. He's totally enthralled with his music. I was inspired by him. I met another person painting, same thing, inspired by this person who has all this beautiful work up on display. I remember meeting this woman. She was sitting down sewing quilts. It started to rain, so she put her tarp over her sewing machine, stood up long enough for me to take this portrait of her. And I remember meeting this woman who was crocheting on the side of the street. This is Terry. She's from Texas. I met her in Scotland, though, when I was there on an internship, but learned that she was a poet. And she shared some of her poetry with me, and it totally inspired me in just how she was able to articulate herself in ways that were just so inspiring. Similar thing to the harpist, I remember hearing the sound of the song Hallelujah in Paris and bouncing off the alleyways, and it drew me in that I wanted to find where it was coming from. And I had to hear this artist play his music, totally infatuated with what he was doing. This was a marching band marching around Paris, playing really loud marching band music. And when I found them, I'm like, holy crap, it's a group of clowns. And I was really excited that the colors were so dynamic, though. I was hired to go to the Cliffs of Moher to shoot a wedding by someone that I knew. And this is a couple of the images that I took while I was there. But after the wedding was over, I decided to walk the streets and meet some people. And in Ireland, it's pretty common to see business owners standing in the entryway of their doors. And so as you're walking along, they're standing kind of welcoming their guests in. And this guy here on the left in the purple doorway, I remember seeing his painting in the window on the street and thinking to myself, that is just an unbelievably beautiful painting. He painted realistic landscapes of Ireland. And so I walked into his shop and I began looking around, and he was there too. And I remember pointing at one, I'm like, this one's crazy. This one's really good. He's like, well, yeah, it's not for sale though. And I said, oh, okay, why? And he said, this is my masterpiece. I don't want to get rid of this one. And I was thinking to myself, how cool that someone created something themselves that they love so much that they wanted to keep it. No amount of money could cause me to sell this to you. What if the relationship we have with songs, paintings, other art is a sample, just a taste of the feeling God has for us? I remember this really hit home when I was in Switzerland and I was walking along this mountainside and I laid down in the grass and I wanted to get a long exposure of the stars. I left my shutter open for about 30 seconds, and I looked at the back of my screen, and it brought me back to the day when I was in Washington, D.C., when I had just discovered what my passion was, and I saw this photo of the stars, and it hit me. It hit me that Christ, God, is an artist, that his world that he created is so unbelievably beautiful. We get so infatuated with our own art, which is a great thing, but look around you. This world is unbelievable. I pulled this video off of YouTube to show you how beautiful our world is. Fade outs. Sorry, guys. But how beautiful our world is. Unbelievable. And I remember hearing this scripture actually just a couple weeks ago at church. And I looked at Anna and I actually started crying. And it said, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us new in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago." And I remember thinking to myself, has it always been this easy? That I am considered God's masterpiece? And it brought me right back to that time when I was in that shop with the painter and him saying, "This is my masterpiece. No one can take this from me." And the fact that we are so unbelievably loved already and we don't even realize it. I was using my camera to try to get something to fill a God-sized hole. And what I learned was that my God is an artist. Look at the world that he's created. But he puts me up puts me against everything that he's created, all the beautiful creatures on earth, all the landscapes, all the mountains, and he says, you are my masterpiece. You are my perfect example of what it means. You're my perfect example of true art. And I can picture this dialogue between me and God saying, but God, like, what about all the bad things that I've forgiven that? What about all my selfish motives? I've forgiven that. But what about the way I feel so ugly? You are perfect. You are my masterpiece. But God lost his favorite creation, and that's you. He made you to be perfect, but something happened. It would be as if I walked into that painter's store and I threw red paint all over it. It broke his heart. The person that he had created to be perfect in his sight, he lost. Our art wasn't meant to make us feel loved. We already are. And in this verse, it says, he has created us new in Jesus Christ so we can do the good things he had planned for us long ago. And what I realized in that scripture is that I was trying to fix a God-sized hole that God has already fixed. He sent his son Jesus to die for me so that he can know me. The camera was never going to be enough. It would never, ever make me feel totally loved and affirmed. But God is saying, you're my masterpiece, and I love you so much that I made sure that I got you back. And he sent his son to die for us, Jesus. There's so many creators in this room. I look around and I know a lot of you, and you're so talented. We've got painters, we've got illustrators, we've got musicians, designers, like you name it. And I just think it's so important that we understand that who we are first is God's masterpiece. We are a piece of art. He created us for a purpose. So that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm going to stand up here and take some questions from you guys. I'd love to answer it, get to know some of you guys who I don't know in the room. I'm selling some stuff in the back, some prints that I like. And hopefully now that you've heard my talk, you can kind of connect a story to them. But thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you.